Welcome to 30 Boring Facts About Connecticut, a relaxing journey through the Constitution State. Tonight, we explore the quiet corners of New England history, where colonial documents, wooden nutmegs, and the first hamburger all found their home. Let your mind wander through these Connecticut facts as we move slowly through time, from the 1600s to the early 1900s. This is a sleep-friendly exploration of Connecticut history, perfect for bedtime or background listening. Fact 1. The Constitution State. Connecticut earned its nickname, the Constitution State, through a document written in 1639 called the Fundamental Orders. This wasn't just another colonial agreement. It was the first written constitution in North America, created by settlers in the Connecticut river towns of Windsor, Hartford, and Wethersfield. These early colonists established a framework for self-governance that predated the United States Constitution by nearly 150 years. The Fundamental Orders outlined how leaders would be elected, how towns would be represented, and how laws would be made. It was remarkably democratic for its time, limiting the power of governors and ensuring that common citizens had a voice. This quiet document, drafted in a winter meeting, would influence the structure of American democracy itself. Connecticut history begins with these words on parchment, setting the tone for centuries to come. Fact 2. The Nutmeg State. Here's where Connecticut's reputation takes an interesting turn. The state is also called the Nutmeg State, but not for reasons you might expect. According to legend, Connecticut sailors and peddlers in the 18th and 19th centuries had a reputation for selling wooden nutmegs to unsuspecting customers. Whether this actually happened or was simply a tale spread by rival merchants remains unclear. Some historians argue it was a myth created to mock Connecticut Yankees for being too shrewd in business. Others point to the fact that real nutmegs were expensive and exotic, making wooden fakes a potentially profitable scam. What we know for certain is that the nickname stuck, becoming part of Connecticut trivia and New England folklore. The wooden nutmeg became a symbol of Yankee ingenuity, whether deserved or not, a strange badge of honor for a state built on trade and commerce. Fact 3. The oldest public library. In the town of Salisbury, Connecticut, stands the Scoville Memorial Library, which traces its roots back to 1771. This makes it one of the oldest public libraries in the United States, a testament to Connecticut's early commitment to education and literacy. The library began as a collection of books donated by local residents who believed knowledge should be accessible to all, not just the wealthy. In colonial America, books were expensive and rare, making public libraries revolutionary institutions. The Scoville Memorial Library survived the Revolutionary War, economic depressions, and centuries of change, continuously serving its community. Today, the building still operates as a library, housing both historical collections and modern resources. Walking through its doors is like stepping into early American history, where the smell of old paper and binding glue connects visitors to generations of Connecticut readers who sought knowledge in these same rooms. Fact 4. The Hartford Courant. Founded in 1764, the Hartford Courant holds the distinction of being the oldest continuously published newspaper in the United States. Think about that timeline for a moment. This newspaper was printing news before the American Revolution, before the Constitution, before Connecticut even became a state. The Hartford Courant reported on the Boston Tea Party, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and the ratification of the Constitution. It survived colonial governance, the Civil War, 2 world wars, and the digital revolution. Through every major event in American history, the Hartford Courant was there, documenting Connecticut and the nation. The paper has changed ownership, updated its printing technology, and adapted to online media. But it has never stopped publishing. In an era when newspapers are closing across the country, the Hartford Courant remains a living piece of Connecticut history and American journalism. Fact 5. The Charter Oak. In 1687, Connecticut faced a crisis that would become one of its most famous legends. King James II of England sent Sir Edmund Andros to Hartford to seize Connecticut's colonial charter, which granted the colony self-governance. The charter represented Connecticut's independence and right to make its own laws. During a tense meeting at a Hartford tavern, as colonial leaders debated with Andros, the candles mysteriously went out, plunging the room into darkness. When the lights were relit, the charter had vanished. Captain Joseph Wadsworth had secretly taken the document and hidden it in the hollow of a large white oak tree. The tree, later known as the Charter Oak, protected Connecticut's charter until the political threat passed. The Charter Oak stood for another 150 years, becoming a symbol of Connecticut's independent spirit. When the tree finally fell in 1856 during a storm, its wood was crafted into chairs, gavels, and other ceremonial objects, preserving the legend in physical form. Fact 6. Witch trials before Salem. When people think of American witch trials, Salem, Massachusetts typically comes to mind. But Connecticut history includes witch trials that occurred decades before the Salem hysteria of 1692. The first person executed for witchcraft in the American colonies was Alcee Young of Windsor, Connecticut, who was hanged in 1647. Between 1647 and 1663, Connecticut executed at least 9 people for witchcraft, more than any other colony during that period. These early Connecticut trials were driven by Puritan religious beliefs, social tensions, and fears about unexplained misfortunes. The accused were often women who didn't fit social norms, those who were outspoken, elderly, or economically independent. Connecticut's witch trials were quieter and less documented than Salem's, but they were just as deadly. This dark chapter in New England history reminds us that fear and superstition shaped early colonial life in ways that seem unimaginable today. Fact 7. No Prohibition ratification. Connecticut has a history of going its own way, and nowhere is this clearer than with Prohibition. When the 18th Amendment was proposed in 1919 to ban the manufacture and sale of alcohol nationwide, Connecticut refused to ratify it. The state legislature voted against the amendment, making Connecticut one of only 2 states that rejected Prohibition from the start. Despite this, Prohibition still became federal law because enough other states ratified it. Connecticut's resistance reflected its urban immigrant population, its German and Irish brewing traditions, and a general skepticism about government overreach. Throughout the 1920s, while Prohibition was officially in effect, Connecticut was known for its speakeasies, bootlegging operations, and a general disregard for the federal ban. The state's refusal to embrace Prohibition showed its independent streak, a continuation of the same spirit that hid the charter in an oak tree centuries earlier. Fact 8. First speed limit. As the automobile age began, Connecticut became the first state to establish a motor vehicle speed limit. In 1901, when cars were still a novelty and most roads were designed for horses, Connecticut passed a law limiting automobile speeds to 12 miles per hour in cities and 15 miles per hour on country roads. This early regulation reflected both excitement about new technology and concern about public safety. Automobiles were unpredictable, loud, and frightening to horses and pedestrians. Connecticut's speed limit law acknowledged that this new invention needed rules. Police enforcement was challenging since few officers had cars themselves and measuring speed was difficult. Still, the law set a precedent that other states would follow, making Connecticut a leader in traffic regulation and automotive law. Fact 9. First telephone book. New Haven, Connecticut published the first telephone directory in history in 1878. The directory was a single page listing just 50 names. No numbers were included because early telephone systems used operators who manually connected calls. You would pick up your telephone and tell the operator which person you wanted to reach. The New Haven telephone book was more of a subscriber list than a true directory, showing who had access to this revolutionary technology. At the time, telephones were expensive and rare, owned primarily by businesses and wealthy individuals. That single-page directory represented the entire telephone network in New Haven. Today, when everyone carries a device that can instantly connect them to billions of people worldwide, it's remarkable to think about those 50 names on one page representing the beginning of global communication networks. Fact 10. Birthplace of the hamburger. Louis's Lunch in New Haven, Connecticut claims to have served the first hamburger in America in 1900. The story goes that a customer rushed into the small lunch wagon asking for something quick he could eat on the go. Louis Lasson, the owner, took a beef patty, placed it between two slices of toast, and handed it over. This simple innovation, a convenient handheld meal, became one of America's most iconic foods. Louis's Lunch still operates today in its original vertical gas grills, cooking hamburgers the same way they did over a century ago. The restaurant refuses to offer ketchup or mustard, maintaining that the burger should be enjoyed with only cheese, tomato, and onion. Whether or not Louis's Lunch truly invented the hamburger is debated by food historians, but Connecticut proudly claims this piece of culinary history, another example of Yankee innovation solving everyday problems. We continue our journey through Connecticut facts, moving from the hamburger into stranger territory. The next 10 facts explore Connecticut's role in American innovation, from candy-making machines to nuclear submarines, before ending with laws that seem too peculiar to be real. Let these Connecticut trivia details wash over you as we explore the unexpected corners of the Constitution State. Fact 11. The first lollipop machine. New Haven, Connecticut appears again in our story, this time as the birthplace of the automated lollipop. In 1908, George Smith invented a machine that could mass-produce lollipops, making the candy affordable and accessible. Before this innovation, lollipops were made by hand, slowly and expensively. Smith's machine could create hundreds of lollipops per hour, revolutionizing candy production. He named his creation after Lollipop, a famous racehorse of the era. The lollipop machine represents Connecticut's contribution to American industrial efficiency, taking a simple pleasure and making it available to everyone. Smith's company would eventually grow into one of the largest candy manufacturers in the country. Today, when you grab a lollipop at a bank or doctor's office, you're experiencing a piece of Connecticut innovation that transformed how treats are made and distributed. Fact 12. The Frisbee's origin. The Frisbee, that circular disc thrown at beaches and parks across America, has Connecticut roots that run through Yale University. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Yale students would toss around empty pie tins from the Frisbee Pie Company, which was based in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The pie tins were lightweight, aerodynamic, and made a satisfying sound when caught. Students would yell, "Frisbee!" as a warning when throwing the tins. Decades later, when the Wham-O Company invented a plastic flying disc in the 1950s, they heard about the Yale tradition and named their product the Frisbee, slightly changing the spelling. The Frisbee Pie Company had no idea their humble pie tins would inspire a toy that would sell hundreds of millions of units worldwide. This connection between Connecticut baking and California toy manufacturing shows how innovation often emerges from unexpected play and regional tradition. Fact 13. First helicopter. Stratford, Connecticut is where Igor Sikorsky built the first practical helicopter in 1939. Sikorsky, a Russian immigrant and aviation pioneer, had been experimenting with helicopter designs for decades. Previous attempts by various inventors had failed to create stable, controllable vertical flight. Sikorsky's VS-300 succeeded where others had failed, using a single main rotor and a tail rotor for stability. On September 14, 1939, the VS-300 lifted off the ground for the first time, hovering for a few seconds before landing safely. Over the following months, Sikorsky refined the design, eventually achieving longer flights and better control. This Connecticut invention revolutionized aviation, rescue operations, military tactics, and emergency medicine. Helicopters could land in places airplanes never could, saving countless lives and opening new possibilities for human flight. The Sikorsky Company still operates in Connecticut, continuing its legacy of rotorcraft innovation. Fact 14. First color television. In 1948, CBS introduced the first color television broadcast from their studios in New Haven, Connecticut. The technology used a rotating color wheel system that created color images on specially equipped televisions. Only a handful of people actually owned color televisions at the time, and the broadcasts were experimental. The system CBS used was mechanical rather than electronic, requiring a large spinning disc with colored filters. While innovative, this approach was eventually abandoned in favor of the electronic color system that became standard. Still, Connecticut's role in the development of color television represents another chapter in the state's contribution to communication technology. From the first telephone book to color broadcasts, Connecticut repeatedly found itself at the intersection of innovation and media, shaping how Americans would consume information and entertainment. Fact 15. First nuclear submarine. Groton, Connecticut is home to the Electric Boat Company, which built the USS Nautilus, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine. Launched in 1954, the Nautilus revolutionized naval warfare and underwater exploration. Unlike conventional submarines that needed to surface regularly to run diesel engines and recharge batteries, the Nautilus could remain submerged for months, limited only by crew supplies. In 1958, the Nautilus became the first vessel to reach the geographic North Pole, traveling under the Arctic ice cap. This achievement demonstrated the strategic and scientific potential of nuclear submarines. The Nautilus now sits as a museum ship in Groton, where visitors can walk through its narrow corridors and imagine life beneath the waves. This Connecticut contribution to military and engineering history changed naval strategy forever. Fact 16. Submarine capital of the world. Groton's connection to submarines extends far beyond the Nautilus. The city has been called the submarine capital of the world, a title earned through over a century of submarine construction and naval presence. The Electric Boat Company has built submarines for the United States Navy since 1899, producing more submarines than any other facility in the world. The Naval Submarine Base, New London, also located in Groton, serves as the primary submarine base for the Atlantic Fleet. Thousands of Connecticut residents work in submarine-related industries, designing, building, and maintaining these complex vessels. The relationship between Groton and submarines is so deep that the city's identity is inseparable from underwater warfare technology. This small Connecticut town quietly supports one of America's most powerful military capabilities. Fact 17. Dinosaur tracks. In Rocky Hill, Connecticut, you can visit Dinosaur State Park, where hundreds of dinosaur tracks from the Jurassic period are preserved in stone. These tracks were discovered in 1966 during excavation for a new state building. Workers uncovered a massive sandstone layer covered in three-toed footprints, each about 16 inches long. The tracks were made approximately 200 million years ago by Dilophosaurus, or similar theropod dinosaurs that walked along an ancient river's edge. The discovery was so significant that construction plans were changed to preserve the site. Today, a geodesic dome protects the tracks, allowing visitors to see exactly where these prehistoric creatures stepped millions of years ago. Connecticut's landscape holds ancient secrets beneath its surface, connections to worlds that existed long before humans, native peoples, or colonial charters. Fact 18. The praying mantis state insect. Connecticut's official state insect is the praying mantis, designated in 1977. This choice is unusual because the praying mantis isn't native to Connecticut. The species was introduced from Europe and Asia in the late 1800s as a natural form of pest control for gardens and farms. The praying mantis is recognizable for its distinctive posture, appearing to pray with its folded front legs, which are actually designed for catching prey. These insects are beneficial predators, eating aphids, beetles, and other garden pests. The decision to make a non-native insect the official state insect reflects Connecticut's practical agricultural heritage. Why choose a butterfly or bee when you can honor an efficient predator that helps Connecticut farmers? This quirky designation shows the state's appreciation for useful creatures, even imported ones. Fact 19. The Bouncing Pickle Law. Connecticut law once contained one of America's strangest food regulations. According to state rules, a pickle could not legally be called a pickle unless it bounced. This bizarre standard emerged from concerns about pickle quality and freshness. The theory was that a good pickle, properly fermented and crisp, would have enough structural integrity to bounce when dropped. A soft, spoiled pickle would splat instead. The law was reportedly enforced at least once in the 1940s when pickle packers in Connecticut were taken to court for selling pickles that failed the bounce test. While this regulation is often cited in lists of strange laws, its exact legal status remains murky. Whether currently enforceable or simply a historical oddity, the bouncing pickle law has become a beloved piece of Connecticut trivia, a reminder that regulations can be both practical and absurd. Fact 20. No walking on hands. In Hartford, Connecticut's capital city, an old ordinance supposedly makes it illegal to cross a street while walking on your hands. Like many unusual municipal laws, This one is difficult to verify in current legal codes, but it appears in numerous historical records. The law likely originated in the early 1900s when street performers and acrobats might have caused traffic disruptions with their stunts. Hartford, as a major insurance and business center, wanted to maintain orderly streets and professional atmosphere. Whether anyone was ever actually arrested for walking on their hands across a Hartford street is unknown. But the law endures in Connecticut folklore. These peculiar regulations give us glimpses into past concerns and priorities, showing how societies attempt to control public behavior in ways that later seem comically specific. We arrive at the final segment of our Connecticut journey, where history becomes legend and fact blurs into folklore. The next 10 facts explore mysterious travelers, cursed villages, and haunted objects. Let your mind drift through these strange Connecticut stories as we conclude our tour of the Constitution State's most unusual corners. Fact 21. The Battle of the Frogs. In 1754, the town of Windham, Connecticut, experienced what became known as the Battle of the Frogs, a night of panic caused by an unexpected natural phenomenon. On a hot June night, townspeople were awakened by tremendous roaring and screeching sounds coming from outside. Convinced they were under attack by either Native Americans or the French, men grabbed their weapons and prepared to defend the town. As dawn broke, the truth emerged. A nearby mill pond had dried up during a drought, concentrating thousands of bullfrogs into a shrinking pool. The frogs, fighting for space and mates, created a deafening chorus that terrified the entire town. The embarrassment that followed became legendary throughout Connecticut. The incident even appears in the town's seal, which features frogs. The Battle of the Frogs reminds us how easily fear can distort perception, turning nature's sounds into imagined threats. Fact 22. The Leatherman. For over 30 years in the late 1800s, a mysterious figure known as the Leatherman walked a 365-mile circuit through Connecticut and New York. He earned his name from the crude leather suet he wore, made from boot tops and scraps. The Leatherman never spoke, communicated only in grunts, and refused to sleep indoors, instead sheltering in caves and rock formations. Despite his silence, communities along his route grew to expect him, offering food and watching for his regular appearances every 34 days. People tried to help him, offering money, shelter, and conversation, but he always refused, maintaining his mysterious routine. When he died in 1889, no one knew his real name or why he chose this strange existence. Some theorized he was heartbroken, others thought he was mentally ill, some believed he was simply a man who preferred solitude. The Leatherman's caves are still visited today by hikers exploring Connecticut trails, remnants of one man's inexplicable journey. Fact 23. The Barkhamsted Lighthouse. Despite its name, the Barkhamsted Lighthouse in Connecticut was never a lighthouse at all. It was a hillside settlement in the 1700s where James Chaume, a Narragansett man, and his wife, Molly Barber, a white woman, built a home. Interracial marriage was controversial and often prohibited at the time, so the couple chose this remote location. Their home sat on a hill visible for miles, and locals began calling it the Lighthouse, either because it stood out like a beacon or as a reference to the couple's role as a guiding example of love transcending racial boundaries. The settlement eventually housed multiple generations of the family and other outcasts seeking refuge from society's judgment. Today, the site is marked by stone foundations and historical markers, a quiet testimony to those who chose love and freedom over social acceptance. The misnamed lighthouse represents Connecticut's hidden histories, stories of people who lived on the margins. Fact 24. The Gungiwamp Site. In Groton, Connecticut, near the submarine base, sits the Gungiwamp Site, a collection of stone chambers, walls, and structures of mysterious origin. Some chambers are built into hillsides with stone slabs forming roofs and walls. The site includes stone circles, walls running through the forest, and what appears to be a calendar chamber that aligns with the equinox. No one knows who built these structures or why. Some archaeologists believe they were root cellars and colonial constructions from the 1700s. Others argue the stonework predates colonial settlement, possibly built by pre-Columbian visitors or indigenous peoples. The name Gungiwamp itself is strange, possibly derived from a Native American term, though its exact meaning is lost. The site attracts archaeologists, historians, and mystery seekers, all trying to understand what happened in these Connecticut woods. The Gungiwamp reminds us that not all history is documented, and some mysteries may never be solved. Fact 25. Dudleytown. High in the hills of Cornwall, Connecticut, lies Dudleytown, an abandoned village with a reputation as one of America's most haunted places. The settlement was established in the 1740s by the Dudley family and other settlers. Over the following century, Dudleytown experienced a disproportionate number of tragedies. Residents reported mental illness, mysterious deaths, disappearances, and suicides. By the 1920s, everyone had left, and the forest reclaimed the village. Legend says the village was cursed, either by the land itself or by a curse following the Dudley family from England. Paranormal investigators have reported strange lights, disorienting feelings, and unexplained sounds. However, historians argue that Dudleytown's misfortunes weren't unusual for remote frontier settlements where isolation, harsh winters, and limited resources made life difficult. The property is now private, closed to visitors, which only adds to its mystique. Dudleytown exists in that strange space between documented history and supernatural legend. Fact 26. The Melon Heads. Fairfield County, Connecticut, has a legend about beings called the Melon Heads, humanoid creatures with bulbous, oversized heads who supposedly lurk in the woods. According to various versions of the story, the Melon Heads were either children from an asylum who escaped and inbred, creating genetic mutations, or victims of medical experiments that enlarged their heads and drove them mad. They allegedly attack cars that drive through their territory at night, scratching at windows and chasing vehicles. Like many local legends, the Melon Head story has no verified basis in fact. No medical facility conducted such experiments, and no physical evidence supports their existence. Yet the legend persists, passed between teenagers and horror enthusiasts. The Melon Heads represent a common type of American folklore, the rural monster lurking just beyond civilization's edge, reminding us that darkness and unknown things still occupy our collective imagination. Fact 27. The Little People's Village. In Middlebury, Connecticut, hidden in the woods, are the ruins of a miniature village built in the 1920s. The structures are tiny, built to half scale, including little houses, a church, and other buildings. The village was created by William Bradley, who built it either for his daughter or as a tourist attraction, depending on which story you believe. After falling into disrepair, The site became surrounded by legend. Some stories claim the village was built for actual little people, a community of dwarfs or gnomes. Others say supernatural beings inhabit the ruins, protecting them from intruders. Visitors report feeling watched, hearing small footsteps, and experiencing unexplained discomfort. The ruins are on private property posted against trespassing, but that hasn't stopped curious explorers. The Little People's Village exists as both a genuine historical oddity and a focal point for supernatural speculation, showing how easily innocent structures can become legendary. Fact 28. The Green Lady of Burlington. Burlington, Connecticut is home to a ghost story about the Green Lady, a spectral figure seen in the woods near a cemetery. The most common version of the legend involves a woman from the 1800s who drowned in a swamp while searching for her husband's grave. Her ghost appears as a green mist or a woman in a green dress, wandering the same paths she walked in life. Witnesses report seeing the glowing green figure near the cemetery, particularly on foggy nights. Some claim she follows cars driving past her territory. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the Green Lady, with mixed results. Skeptics suggest the green glow might be swamp gas or bioluminescent fungi, natural phenomena that create eerie lights. Whatever the explanation, the Green Lady has become part of Burlington's identity, a ghost story that connects residents to their town's past and to the universal human fascination with what might exist beyond death. Fact 29. Midnight Mary Gravestone. In Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven, Connecticut stands a gravestone with an unsettling inscription. Mary Hart's gravestone, dating from 1872, reads, "At high noon, just from and about to renew her daily work in her full strength of body and mind, Mary E. Hart, having fallen prostrate, remained unconscious until she died at midnight, October 15th, 1872. The grave has become known as Midnight Mary's Grave, surrounded by legend. Stories claim that anyone who touches the stone at midnight will die, or that Mary was accidentally buried alive, and the stone commemorates her fate. Ghost hunters report strange occurrences near the grave, including cold spots, electromagnetic anomalies, and feelings of being watched. The truth is simpler, but still tragic. Mary likely died from a sudden illness or stroke, but the specific time references in her epitaph, combined with the name Midnight Mary, have transformed an ordinary grave into a legend that draws visitors seeking connection with the supernatural. Fact 30. The Annabelle Doll. Our final Connecticut fact brings us to Monroe, where the Warren Occult Museum houses Annabelle, one of the most famous haunted objects in the world. Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll that, according to paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, was possessed by an inhuman spirit. The doll was reportedly given to a nursing student in 1970, after which strange events began occurring. The doll would move on its own, leave handwritten notes, and allegedly attacked people. The Warrens took possession of Annabelle and placed her in a locked glass case in their Connecticut museum, where she remains. The Annabelle story inspired multiple horror films, making this Connecticut artifact internationally famous. Skeptics argue the entire story was fabricated or exaggerated, that the Warrens were entertainers rather than genuine investigators. Believers point to the numerous witnesses who reported strange experiences. Annabelle sits in her case in Connecticut, a Raggedy Ann doll that somehow became the center of one of America's most enduring supernatural legends. This video is sponsored by BIROQ Consulting for BIROQ Studio. BIROQ Studio brings together creativity, simplicity, and intention. Whether through digital downloads, thoughtful gifts, or peaceful content, the mission remains the same. Create things that feel useful, calming, and meaningful in a noisy world. Have a good night and rest well.